Beth, have you heard from Matt Crawford? We do have a quorum, so we will go ahead and I'll call the meeting to order. First order of business is a review and approve the minutes from the meeting held on November 17th, 2017. Everybody has had a copy sent to them. Any questions or corrections?
Move to adopt unless changes are noted.
Okay. Motion, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Get into the review of the financials. I asked Joe to pull those up. I think they were sent out to the commission ahead of time. First thing we're going to look at is the A&P revenue trends over the last couple of years. In 2017, we had revenue of $673,000. I will note that was about a 3% decline over the previous year. We did have a steady growth year over year for the last couple of years and did see a 3% decline. Going into 2018, if you look at January and February, there is some discrepancy there. We had 2 or 3 hotels that did not pay in January but paid them at the 1st of February, and that's why there's quite a bit bigger number in February. But if you combine those together, still about 6% lower for January and February year over year. So, I think that's something we really need to look at, not just an A&P standpoint, but a city standpoint, and try to determine, the factors involved in that. I did talk to Nas Kazi a while ago and just asked him about what he's seeing. He owns a couple of them, and then Dan also. So I might just let Dan speak on that for a minute. And
From last year, we started seeing steady drop, from September. And as you can see, the result you can see in 2017, we've had, constant drop. And it carried over surprisingly in 2018, January and February, but possibly somewhat to do with weather. And construction is what's majorly down in our town right now. And I think that has a lot to do with it. I don't know how, the construction is going to happen, the rest of the projects that are on the way or what, but our town depends a lot on the construction. So we need to be a little cautious right there. I think we're seeing some drop, and we should be a little worried on that.
Pretty much what Nas said, the same thing is what he's seeing with his hotels. So, I just think it's something we need to be aware of. And while we are in a really good cash position right now, it's something going into next year's cycle that we're going to need to really prepare for. We do, I guess the other side of it, we do have Mr. Kazi's Holiday Inn that he thinks will be coming online in about 8 weeks.
Yeah.
And then also the other one across from NEA Hospital.
NEA is supposed to be coming on too soon, so that should help, on the revenue part.
So we'll be interested to see how that affects overall revenue.
Yeah.
And rates and everything. So.
Right.
Okay. Just make sure we duly note that when we start looking at funding for next year's cycle. The next spread is the 2017 A&P requests and approvals. Go down towards the bottom. This is just a year-end summary of everything we funded last year and kind of the year-ending cash position. Down at the bottom, we had cash on hand of $327,000, and that was right at the end of the year. We have 2 items that are remaining to be funded from last year. One of them is the barbecue festival, showing about $9,000, and I think Bill said we had about $3,000 more in invoices we were going to pay out of that, and Tim thought he was going to come in a little under that $100,000 mark also, so I'm not sure if we'll end up fully funding that whole $100,000. And the Wounded Warriors project, that will get funded. I think that's where that is basically paid out of the city parks department, and we're going to refund that on their expenses, and so that will get cleared out soon. So our ending cash balance, after you take those items out, is right at $300,000. And I think 2 or 3 months ago, we were estimating around $305,000. So we were really close on our estimates there. Are there any questions on 2017's approvals and items that were funded. Okay. We'll go into 2018's. And again, this is a very similar sheet, just a little different format, where what we're trying to do here is just estimate where we're at cash-wise and where we think we'll be at the end of the year. Our current cash position is $377,000. This is at the end of February 28th. Our current cash position was $377,000. Our projected revenues, I put in there $585,000. I derived that by taking the 2 months that we've collected in January and February and pretty much just saying we're going to hopefully collect the same amount we did in 2017. And it's way too early to tell, but even if we have a slight decline and then the new hotels coming on, I think we'll be real close there. So our total cash plus expected revenues would be $962,000. Take out the two items from 2017 that still remain to be funded of $26,397, and then the items that we have committed on for 2018 of $689,000. That'd leave us an estimated cash position of about $247,000. So, any questions there? And we pretty much have maintained a thought process that we want to keep in the neighborhood of between $200,000 and $300,000 on hand going into each year to use for, because if everybody asks for their money in January, we want to make sure we have the cash on hand to do that. So, any questions on 2018 applications and funding? Okay. I will note on there, we did have two items that were approved back last year that have withdrawn their request for funding. One of them was the Jehovah Witness Convention. I've talked to them, and they still want to do that next year. We were actually in a bidding process with other cities. It's very competitive, and really just didn't know if we had enough hotel space this year, but they feel very confident that we'll be able to land this next year. So they do expect to come back next year for that, and we hope they do. And the other is the DARE program. It's my understanding they just didn't have enough funding to fund the whole program, and so they, instead of trying to do it on a partial budget, they decided to pass and maybe wait till next year. So that money has been added back into the estimates. So that's basically $20,000 that we allocated that won't be used this year. So, any questions on the financials? I guess we need a motion to approve the financials as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Okay, we'll move right into new business. The first order of business is to accept the resignation of Kathy Cardwell. Kathy, I think, was one of the original founding members of the A&P Commission.
Pretty close.
And she served, how long has she served on the commission? 10? How long has it been?
Well, I've been here 12, I think, 10 or 12. She was before me, so.
She was very, very active in the commission, very, very active in the community. She has gotten out of the hospitality business, and she requested verbally back last year to be removed from the commission. We asked her to stay on, and then she just finally decided it was time for her to move on, but she did a tremendous amount of work for this commission, not only this commission, but this city in general. So we did not get a formal resignation in writing, and because of that, we'll need to just, I guess, formally make a recommendation to accept her verbal resignation. So I'll need a motion to accept her resignation.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Chairman, I think we ought to provide her some kind of letter.
Okay.
Beth, y'all get together, please.
We will do that. We will do so. Okay. So all in favor of accepting her verbal resignation?
Reluctantly, yes.
Okay. Any opposed? Motion carries. So, okay, thank you. Next order of business is legislative audit. I've asked Bill Resnick to explain that for us and to go over that in detail. This is something that we started the process on back in November.
Right.
And we've had a couple of meetings, you and I and Beth. We've also met with the legislative audit team, and something we've been working on to make sure we get this correct. So.
I'll start by talking about exactly where this originated from, how it came onto the auditor's radar this last year. During the audit planning process, the auditors and their elements for the audit, they select scope. And items either get scoped in or out of the audit, depending on whether or not they rise to a level of materiality that would affect the financial statements taken as a whole. So in this case, the item for Red Wolf Foundation of $100,000 was scoped into the audit. And in their examination, what they said basically was this item didn't conform to the code in terms of subsidizing civic organizations. So, like Jerry said, we met with them and we talked in November. And when they issued the report, their statement was not a significant deficiency, material weakness, or material instance of noncompliance, but they did say that we needed to obtain contracts for these types of fundings. So what we did was we met with Carol, and we got guidance on how to construct a contract, which we've done since then. Responded back to them, and they can't, in essence, pre-audit this coming year's work, but they've said that based upon that contract, they feel like it'll be sufficient if the item gets selected again in future audits.
You referenced Carol, that's Carol Duncan, the city attorney,
Duncan.
correct? Okay. And I think it's important to note that, this was approved back, I think, 2015, and it followed the application guidelines, and their distinction was we had received application, followed that process, but they wanted it basically in a specific contract format. Is that correct?
Yeah, and the contract form that they were looking for would spell out specifically what the items were going to be used for, as well as language that said that this was not subsidizing the routine operation of that business or civic organization. In other words, we can't subsidize their typical salaries or typical programs. The work that we do has to be something incremental to what they typically would do in order to attract business to the area. So that was kind of the key component that came out of the discussions with them. They would not go as far as give us an exact form of contract. They had to kind of leave that up to our city attorney and comply with what we felt like the code asked for. But they did in the end say that what we had come up with, drafted, had signed, essentially the best they could say in advance of this coming year's audit complied with the letter of the law as it's written. And we feel like going forward, we're going to need the same type of agreements for all the other applicants as well, so that we comply with the law, even though they likely will not be selected for audit because the size of the Red Wolf Foundation is significantly larger than the other ones. We still need to comply and the other applicants as well and have contracts signed for them. So as part of this process, we're going to not only remediate the Red Wolf Foundation situation, but we'll also mitigate any other future instances of something similar to this coming up on their radar.
Again, to note, the Red Wolf Foundation was picked up because of the dollar size, but this contractual language applies to all items that we grant funding to.
Correct.
And we have amended the ASU contract and sent them that information, and they feel comfortable with that. Is that a correct statement?
That is correct. And I met again approximately 6 weeks ago with two of the individuals from the legislative audit that we met with originally in November, went over the revised remediated agreement. Again, their comment was they can't give us an advance opinion on the review they may do this coming year, but they felt like that it was certainly in compliance with the type of language and agreement that they were looking for.
We also, another step in that process is originally we had granted, or we'd sent out grant form agreements to everybody that we granted money for 2018. We went back after this and revised those to a contract form that was reviewed by Carol, the city attorney, and got all of those re-signed by every person or every organization that received funding. I think it's important to note, I think this is just another step. This last year, we spent a significant amount of time on two different things, convention center, but then the other thing, if you look at the video of the meetings, was revising our policies, guidelines, applications, and follow-up reports. We adopted all those last year, all of us did, and so this is just another, I think, a safeguard to protect the integrity of the process and the documentation process. So, well, it's never good to get noted in an audit, but I think it's really good that it just, I think, shores up the process that we've already put in place. So, any questions regarding that? Any questions from the floor regarding that? Okay. Anything else on legislative audit? I'll let you stay up and visit about the next item too.
Okay.
The next item on the agenda is transient rentals and specifically Airbnb. So I'll let you kind of talk about what we've done on exploring that information.
Yeah, and this came out of a meeting that I had earlier this year at DFA in Little Rock, and they had mentioned that some other municipalities had found an opportunity with the transient rentals, and we'll specifically talk about Airbnb as being a good example of this, where they were able to collect occupancy tax on these type of rentals, and that we should look at this as an opportunity for the A&P Commission and even possibly on the privilege license side. And what we did is we talked about it internally, and we talked about it with Jerry as it relates to the commission. We felt like Airbnb is an easy one to carve out of this group, and there is actually an agreement between Eureka Springs and Airbnb existing already that we modeled one after that we could employ here for the commission. That essentially would collect the occupancy tax on people that rent out their home, their condo, loft, whatever, to Airbnb as the agent. And that gives us a easy mechanism for collecting the occupancy tax, the monitoring it. The other side of it are the people that are doing it on their own, that are not going through an agent, they're going through Craigslist or they're advertising in the newspaper. And that universe gets a little harder to identify. So, we had initially talked about casting a little wider net on this and trying to encompass people that were doing one-off type of rentals, or if they had a periodic rental of a furnished townhome or a cabin, something like that. But it becomes very difficult to track those people. And we just thought to start with, if we use the Airbnb model, see where we get with that one and how much value that brings to the table, whether or not we want to move and cast a little wider net on the other folks and take on the bureaucracy that might create by trying to do that. So what we've done is Carol Duncan has taken the Eureka Springs agreement with Airbnb and made changes to that so that we could use it for Jonesboro.
To distinguish between the occupancy tax when that kicks in, is that 30 days or less?
30 days or less. So these are typically rentals where people are renting them out for the weekend or on a weekly basis, sometimes overnight basis. We looked this week, for example, for Airbnb this weekend in Jonesboro, there were 18 properties that were listed available for sale. So whether or not that's a good rule of thumb, but it's probably somewhere give or take in that range at any given time that people are offering up for rent. And I assume that during football games and events in the city that probably more people are listing their property or properties that they have available for rent there.
So tell us the process if we wanted to adopt this. This commission would need to approve this today to be
recommended to go to the finance committee, who then would review it. If they approve it, it would go on to the council. We would need an ordinance to change the current A&P commission collection to include the Airbnb, the transient type of rentals.
So what we need to do is act on this agreement today to recommend it to be moved
Correct.
to City Finance Committee.
Correct.
What he said.
I think we will need a motion
Make a
to,
motion to forward it to finance.
okay? Second?
Hey, since I'm chairman of finance, should I vote on this or should I recuse myself?
I don't think you'd have to recuse.
Okay, just want to make sure.
You're acting on behalf of the A&P at this point, so.
Well, so we're City Water and Light Board member. I mean, you know, I just want to be, I didn't think I would have to. I just wanted to bring that
I
up.
don't see any conflict.
I need a vote to move this to Finance Committee. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, thank you. Bill, thank you for your work, and Beth also. They've spent a significant amount of time on both of these, especially on the audit. Bill really took that off of the commission's plate and worked on them, worked with them through Christmas in that area. And then Beth also has taken a tremendous load off of this commission by redoing these contracts and just keeping up with the paperwork, which is a job. So we appreciate that. Speaking of Beth, I'll ask you to come up and we'll talk about the review of process for payments, a couple different areas there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We provided for you, and I think it's on the PowerPoint too, part of this whole process of redoing how the commission awards and how they pay is to spread out the expense more in line with how the revenues are received. And so this is just a working chart that I use and share with Jerry about what they've been approved for and how they want to be paid. They have up to 60 days to submit their follow-up report, and according to the guidelines, we don't pay in advance except unless that's approved in advance, and we have some of those later for the commission to look at. But it has enabled us to provide a better documentation of our payments. We're tracking when the follow-up reports are received, and we can follow that and share that information with you. Spreads out the disbursements, and then it also lets us budget a little bit. You can see on that last column that we estimate for the groups that are being paid quarterly, that's going to be about $29,000 a quarter. That's for the ones who receive year-round funding. We split that out so that we can budget for that. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. Some of the ones that are marked spring or fall, they're dependent on the weather and when they start. We just kind of wanted an idea about when we might anticipate that disbursement.
It also helps us, like you said, a significant amount with just timing of inflows and outflows, because
It does.
everybody asks for all their money at the first quarter. It can really,
It does. And our current process is they write me and request, they submit their follow-up report. I look at it, review it, I share it with the chair, he signs off on it, and then we authorize the payment. The city cuts checks 2 times a month, on the 8th and on the 22nd, so we time those disbursements related to that. But that process has been greatly improved.
Has the quality of the follow-up reports been good?
It has. You know, we're really early in the process right now for that first quarter of the year, but yes, I think so. And you can see we've received the 27 reports. As we go forward on our funding, when you all are looking at in the fall of 2018 for 2019, if they've not submitted their follow-up report in time, then you don't have there's a chance that you wouldn't want to fund them because that's one of the criteria. So
One
there's
thing-
motivation.
one thing Beth is doing too is pretty much 60 to 90 days after the event, she's emailing them if they haven't turned in their follow-up report to make sure they get it to us. We're not just hoping it comes. We're really going to track it. And I think, again, part of this audit process and application process we put in place last year, we are going to make sure we get those follow-up reports. We're going to put some teeth in it. You know, if they don't provide the follow-up reports, we have the ability to go back and request the money back. And
So if I'm looking at this right, is it about 5 organizations that haven't turned in their 2017 follow-up report?
Yes.
And we have emailed those, and we didn't want to
Yes.
go into that in this meeting, but we're going to give them one more before the next meeting. And
It's a new process for
Right,
many of
right,
them,
I
and some of
understand
those are really big organizations trying to figure out how to navigate this new criteria.
Right.
And when they were funded in 2016 for 2017, that was not a requirement.
Right. All right, thanks, Beth.
Any other questions on process of payments? Okay. Funding requests, we'll get into some previously approved funding requests. Just an update on the convention center. I did have communication with Mr. O'Reilly this morning, and they are diligently moving forward. Again, waiting on the weather to warm up. They're also working on some final designs on some outbuildings and getting close to getting ready to start digging footings. I think they've mobilized equipment and fencing and all other items out there. So it's moving forward. So update on the Downtown Barbecue Festival. When we approved it last year, back in the fall, it was contingent upon them being able to make that into a multi-day festival for the approval that we did of $100,000. Tim McCall wasn't able to be here today, but we have secured a corporate sponsor who is going to step up in a significant way to help that turn into probably a Friday, Saturday at least event. And wanted Tim to be here first before we announce who it is. And I know Tim and I've met with them, and I think it's going to be a great partnership for us and for the town. So I'm excited about that. And hopefully by the next meeting, we'll be able to roll out the partnership information along with the bands, and really Tim's working that almost daily right now to get all that set aside. So very good news there. Okay. Beth, I will ask you to step back up and kind of help us go through these next three items, the requests that we have coming in and for these
Well,
existing.
I have shared with the commission a request from Arkansas Hoops. You will remember at their presentation last fall, they're bringing a new a tournament program to Jonesboro. The commission approved a $25,000 award to them contingent upon them using those funds to promote Jonesboro and bring people to town. As noted in the information that was shared with you, Nicholas Mason has detailed how he needs to spend that money, how he intends to spend that money, and he has requested an advance on that $25,000 because he needs that in place in order to be able to secure those things. It's a new event. They don't have any kind of base funding.
So you're just bringing that in because it is such a large amount that you're
Yes,
requesting up front.
Correct. And they have also adjusted their date. Originally, when you approved it, it was going to be in April. I'm sorry, April, and they have moved it up to May.
Okay. And we will get follow-up reports for the expenditures and
Correct.
all that. And he did provide us a detailed budget of where that money was going specifically. We can compare that to the follow-up report that he provides.
Yes.
Is that correct? I guess we just need a motion to,
Does he need it all at one time?
He's requested it on one level. It would be up to the commission if you want to approve it.
I want it needing.
I think he is wanting it up front so he can get all his advertising paid for, which I know they like to have their money when you order it, so. Because this is all advertising related. It's not event related.
No, it's advertising related.
Advertising.
It's radio advertisements, online advertisements, social media, and billboards.
I guess we'll just ask for a request from the floor to approve that.
I'll go ahead and put that in the form of a motion.
Motion, second.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
City Youth?
Second request is from City Youth Ministries. The commission approved a $4,000 award for them for a literacy program that they want to do. And as in all the requests last fall, the commission was very intentional that the monies needed to be used to market those programs and bring people to town. We have a request from their executive director that they be able to shift the use of some of those funds. They actually need a portion of that budget, not just all for marketing, but they need it to provide some meal expense and some, I would call them takeaways as part of that literacy program for the population that they serve. And so I have a request from the executive director that they be able to redirect a portion of the $4,000 that was approved for them, $1,000 for materials and $1,000 for up to $1,000 in both of those categories that would be purchased locally. And she also wants to move that event to the fall. It was scheduled earlier this year.
I guess the question I have, and Beth and I talked about that this morning, is this, it's obviously definitely needed for our city, but does it fall into the guidelines for A&P funding? And that's the question that she's asking us, I guess, at this time to make sure it does.
And if we do it, that's the key point, because we got to make sure it falls into the guidelines, because if we do it for them,
Or are we setting a precedent?
then, it's 2,000 this time, but next time it could be 25,000. I think it's a great program, and I hope we can do it, but
I personally think it'd be a hard argument to justify food, especially the take-home materials, very possibly.
I think we'd be getting back into the same issue that we discovered, whether it be $100,000 or $2,000 with the legislative audit, that we're getting into an area where we're providing a subsidy versus an event program bringing new people to town. Based on that, I think we have to stick with our guidelines, even though, make it duly noted, this is a great program, but we do have specific guidelines, and if we bend for one organization, it's going to be hard not to do it for every other one, because there's a lot of really needy organizations. But my recommendation is that we just stick to the marketing aspect of this program and just approve the amended funding for $2,000 versus the $4,000.
For sake of a vote, I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve this as written, and then we can vote it either up or down.
if we just take no action, does it stay the same? It's got to be for marketing. If we take no action,
We take no
approved for
action, all
marketing. It
4,000
was
would have to go to marketing.
so
It was all approved for marketing. The $4,000, the total budget was $6,000 for the project, and as you made your actions, it was $4,000 for the marketing of the program.
Yeah, my only question was, Mr. Gibson, if we take no action, then we're just saying you got to leave it how it was.
Right.
That's correct.
And if they don't use it for marketing, then they have to not use the money that they're not.
Correct.
Okay. So I'll withdraw my motion.
So just note that no action was taken on this request. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay,
Reluctantly.
right.
And then the last request I have is from the Treble Clef Club. They are requesting an early payment of their approved grant. It's $2,500, and Ms. Qualls indicated, it's, again, it's a limited budget, and they budget to zero, and she simply can't provide the ad space and the advertising for the event if she does not have an early disbursement of those funds.
And this is an event that we have funded in the past.
Correct.
And I guess a couple of years, and it's always gone as planned and as the application is stated.
And she submitted her follow-up reports and has complied.
Just make a motion that we approve the funding.
Second.
Second. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Beth, for helping us sort through those requests. Yep, we've got a new request on board for Dennis Knoll. Asked Dennis to come up and discuss this. I will state, back in the application process in the fall, we made it noted that we wanted all applications, especially previous applications, to go through the normal funding cycle. We did also note that we would make an exception to look at other ones outside of that time frame if there was two reasons. One, that it was a new program, and then two, if money was available. So I'll go ahead and just turn it over to Dennis and let him kind of explain what he is wanting to do this year.
Okay, I'm Dennis Doyle. Me and my wife own D&W Automotive and D&W Outdoors. What I'm coming to you today about is a duck calling contest. And this contest is a regional contest, which means if they compete in this, they're able to go on to the Worlds. In other words, one person at each one of these calling contests, which is 35 to 37 across the United States. So, I mean, we've been in business in sporting goods for 15 years now, and we have been trying to get a calling contest to Jonesboro the whole time. So in other words, it's a hard thing to get. We finally got it secured and have one that we'll have this August 18th here in Jonesboro. Now, what this is it'll be people from all over, multiple states that come in and compete for this calling contest to go on to the Worlds. And what we're asking from you guys is to help on advertising and prize money, because the better our prize money is, the farther we're going to get these people to come for it. In other words, and we're going to have some other calling contests to go along with it for like youth and other people, you know, to win also. But it's not a sanctioned deal. In other words, that'll be mostly local folks that'll compete in that. But the sanctioned calling contest is it's a hard deal to get. It's taken us a long time to get it. And we would like to build this into something that we do year after year to continue to bring folks. You know, all these folks are going to have to come in a day early, so they will be spending the night, you know, to get ready to compete that next day. And it puts Jonesboro on the map, more recognized for our duck hunting in this area. I don't know if you guys are very familiar with duck hunting, but we do attract a lot of folks in from out of town that stay in our hotels and stuff for duck hunting. This will put us farther on the map of having this calling contest too, to be recognized as a place more than we already are for duck hunting.
I will note, Dennis, I know Dennis well, and he knows the industry, he knows tourism. He and D&K, they've worked with a lot of these organizations for the last 15 years, whether it be the Duck Classic, DU banquets, Delta Waterfowl, turkey banquets, and all the different regional ones, basically handling the gun raffles and basically volunteering his time. So he understands that business and what it can mean for Jonesboro and tourism. We also, in the Duck Classic last year, Kim Provost and I were trying to talk about ways to expand that other than what it does already. I mean, it brings a lot of people in. And one of the things we talked about was a duck calling contest, and they just weren't in a position to take that on. So I think this will be a huge benefit for our area.
Yeah, as far as the contest, we tried to work it with the Duck Classic. But in order to get the people here that needs to compete in it, the Duck Classic is too late in the year to do that. So, I mean, we have tried for a long time to get this sanctioned calling contest. Now, what we was talking about with the Duck Classic wasn't necessarily a sanctioned calling contest. It was just a calling contest. But
How many others contest sanctions?
how many? There'll be 35 to 37 of them. I think there's 35 of them right now on the books, but they said there could be a couple more added. Most places that have a sanctioned calling contest attracts a pretty good crowd. The Worlds is held here in Stuttgart, Arkansas.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Stuttgart is the main
Yeah,
area.
Chamber of Commerce has it there. There's a lot of other calling contests too, but they're not always sanctioned.
Are they, any of them in August?
Yeah, there is some in August. I don't know the exact amount yet, because not all the dates have been set for them. But July, August, and September are that's the months to have them. So
I think this would be good to try to pull some of that duck hunting business from south up to our area too.
yeah, I would hope that we attract 6 to 8 states that should come to this. But, this is all brand new. I can't give no guarantees or anything like that, but, we're going to work it hard and make it as big an event as we possibly can.
And this date gets you before football season too.
We do have in our guidelines,
Prize money. Can we do prize money?
yeah, I think we've done prize money and advertising. And this does fall into our seed funding categories, so.
I mean, we're probably, along with the cash prizes, I mean, we're going to hit manufacturers up for merchandise to go along with those prizes too. I mean, we want to not only make this event for out-of-staters to come, but we want to get our youth too to understand duck calling. We want to have a lot of duck calling manufacturers as well as reps that'll be coming in from out of town. Be a part of this event.
What kind of prize money is generally given at these events?
Well, the minimum prize money is $1,000 for first place. So that's what we want to do is try to get, and there's guys out there giving more than 3,000, but it's up to your event. In other words, we want to have a good amount of prize money as well as some very nice trophies that you can win, go along with that. In other words, we want, being that we're the new kid on the block, I mean, I feel like we're going to have to put out more to get some of these guys to say, look, I normally go to this state to compete. I'll go over here to compete this time. It might be trying to swing them from one state to another,
Is there competing dates?
competing dates.
Yeah.
I don't know that yet. As of right now, when I set that date, there was not, but there could be. I mean, Jonesboro's never had a sanctioned calling contest ever here. The closest one would have been Wiener, and from what I understand, that's probably been 15 years ago. Yeah. At the Rice Festival, they used to have one there.
I think the recommendation or the request is for 7,500. I would, I guess, recommend that we do the amount which is the maximum of our seed money category for a first year event of $5,000. Unless
So moved.
I'll second that.
motion, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank y'all.
Are there any other new requests out there that we have not talked about? Other business, one thing we'll look at our next meeting, just to be thinking about, our city rules request that we have a elected secretary and treasurer, so we'll talk about that at the next meeting if anybody wants to volunteer. Then another thing that Beth and I are working on is the beginning stages of a website for the A&P that'll be used for all of Jonesboro. So that's going to be really a major focus that we're going to work on the next couple of months, and hopefully have a lot more information on that to roll out at the next meeting. So it's something exciting that I've been wanting to do since I've gotten on here. So I guess any other new business? Sir? Brad?
Hey, well, he's coming up. I mean, one thing that, may be coming up is the bike ped plan. That obviously would be something that brings a lot of people to Jonesboro, hopefully. So I think it'd be neat to, maybe have Martin or somebody come do a presentation to the A&P on that, and maybe think about ways that the A&P could help with that, if it gets approved and comes to fruition.
Very good idea. Maybe we could bring that to the next meeting for a presentation.
Yeah.
Yes, sir?
Just real quick, I just want to say thank you for what you guys do. And I know a lot of people don't do that enough, but I just want to say thank you for that. Our event, the Jonesboro Open, is coming up in 3 weeks. Just want to give you a real quick update. As of we stand right now, we've got 82 men professional players, 14 women professional players, and 70 amateurs all coming to Jonesboro. That encompasses 30 different states, Canada, Finland, and Germany all coming here. That's a 3-day event. They'll start rolling in about a week before for practice rounds. So right now we've got a lot of momentum going on, and I couldn't do it without you guys. So I just want to say thank you. So.
Appreciate it.
Congrats on the success. That's hard work.
Okay. Any other business? Okay. If not, I'll accept a motion to
So
adjourn.
moved.
Motion second. Any opposed? I think that was the quickest meeting we've had.